Four girls, Annie, Brenda, Elise, and Cynthia, are graduating and enjoying their last moments at an educational institution. Their time in college has been a time of growing up, where they feel that all doors are open ahead. Cynthia, who has always been the binding force in their friendship, gives each of her friends pearl necklaces. She chooses each piece carefully, giving these pieces of jewelry a special meaning, as if the very fabric of their friendship is woven together in a single gesture. It becomes a symbol of their eternal friendship, and they all vow to always stay close despite future trials and separations. They can't even imagine that in a few years, their lives will change and they will find themselves separated. They take a photo together as a keepsake, confident that their bond will remain strong. But it is this photo that years later will be a reminder of how quickly things change and how hard it is sometimes to keep what was so important before. Time passes and the women lose touch. Cynthia is going through a difficult time. Her ex-husband, who got rich through her family, is marrying a much younger woman. Cynthia sends letters to her 3 friends, leaving her pearl necklaces with the housekeeper. This gesture symbolizes her farewell to the past. Cynthia soon dies by suicide, which shocks her loved ones. When Annie, Brenda, and Elise attend the funeral, they realize that they have each gone through their own problems and failures. Annie, despite holding a high position in an advertising company, is going through a personal crisis. Her husband, Aaron, is estranged from her and she is in therapy trying to improve her self-esteem. She still hopes that her marriage to Aaron can be restored. Elise, a former actress, is going through a divorce from her producer husband Bill and losing her career, hoping for plastic surgery to regain her former attractiveness. Brenda, for her part, is facing financial difficulties after divorcing her husband Morty, who previously ran a chain of successful electronics stores. Annie, still hoping to rebuild her relationship with Aaron, decides that their problems can be overcome. One day, he invites her to dinner, and physical intimacy between them re-emerges. However, Aaron soon stuns Annie by informing her that he is filing for divorce and also reveals that he is seeing her therapist. This blow shatters her hopes and ruins her self-confidence. Meanwhile, Elise, trying to regain at least some of her former career, meets a director who promises her a role, but she soon realizes that he wants her to play an unattractive mother, which disappoints her. This becomes another blow to Elise, as she has long felt her loss of attractiveness and need for support. Brenda runs into Morty and his new, young and beautiful friend, Shelley. Shelley insults Brenda by making remarks about her weight, which becomes another stumbling block in Brenda's life. These remarks hurt her deeply, making Brenda feel insecure again, though she tries not to show it. All 3 women find themselves at an impasse, but decide to band together. They come to the conclusion that revenge will be the best way to deal with those who have wronged them. For each of them, revenge becomes a way to regain control of their lives, to regain lost strength. Their goal becomes justice, rather than simple retribution. Calling their association the First Wives Club, they decide to strike out at their ex-husbands. Each woman realizes that their association is a chance to change their fate, to restore their self-esteem. Annie springs into action. She gets her daughter a job at an advertising agency where her ex-husband Aaron works. The girl fulfills the role of a spy, and soon Annie learns that Aaron's partners want to sell their share in the agency. This discovery becomes an important step for the revenge plan, as it allows Annie to undermine Aaron's business and prevent his continued success. Meanwhile, Elise meets with Bill to return the artwork and furniture she once bought for him. She sells them to Annie for a token sum, and the latter in turn sells the items at auction, defrauding Shelley of the purchase. With the proceeds, Annie buys out Aaron's partner's stake in the agency, thus gaining a strategic advantage. This allows the women to further their goals by supporting each other in their vengeance. Brenda, learning from her Sicilian uncle that the store Morty ran was originally acquired through dishonest means, begins an investigation, uncovering Morty's financial machinations. She finds evidence that confirms his business was built on lies. It soon becomes apparent that his success was built on false documents and dishonest deals. This discovery gives the women an additional weapon in their fight against their ex-husbands, as they can use these facts to strike at Morty's reputation. Elise, however, is not coping well with this situation. With her addiction to alcohol, it becomes increasingly difficult to control herself, and at one point the tension between the women escalates. In moments of weakness, Elise loses confidence again, and her behavior becomes increasingly destructive. They fight, and everything seems on the verge of breaking down, but eventually Brenda and Elise reconcile. Brenda decides to support Elise despite her problems and realizes that only together can they get through things. Together they convince Annie not to give up, to keep fighting and not to give up on her goal. This unity helps them to move forward and not lose faith in themselves. The women discover that Phoebe, Bill's new friend, is actually much younger than she claimed to be. She's only 16 years old, which soon becomes an important bargaining chip in their fight with Bill. This information calls Bill's moral character into question, making his behavior even more repugnant in the eyes of the women. Time for a decisive step. Women meet with their ex-husbands, handing them threatening evidence of their wrongdoing. As they negotiate, each of the men begins to feel the strain, realizing that it is no longer possible to hide their mistakes. The women demand that the men fund a non-profit organization founded in Cynthia's honor that will help women in difficult situations. At this point, their determination and cohesion become an unstoppable force that cannot be matched. The threat of all secrets being revealed forces the men to agree to the women's demands. Bill, Aaron, and Morty, despite their attempts to avoid responsibility, can do nothing to counter it, realizing that their past actions are doomed to consequences. At the grand opening of a charity organization, Morty unexpectedly returns to Brenda, leaving his young friend Shelley behind. He realizes that his life has lost meaning without Brenda and is now trying to win her back. He approaches her with sincere remorse and, for the first time in a long time, speaks words in which one hears not a business calculation, but human warmth. Brenda, observing his act, sees for the first time that behind the facade of a successful businessman, the man she once loved is once again coming through. Shelley, meanwhile, continues to flirt with Bill, but he is no longer sure of her intentions and begins to question her age. Her behavior at the reception becomes overly defiant, and those around her begin to notice her frivolity and immaturity. This moment emphasizes how superficial relationships can break down when a person's true worth comes into focus. Bill, on the other hand, after getting over his recent insecurity, begins to realize that flirtation and affection cannot be based on outward attractiveness alone. His confusion grows into the realization that he himself has fallen victim to the illusions to which he had previously willingly succumbed. Elise finally gets the lead role in a successful Broadway play and begins a relationship with a fellow actor, which brings her joy and confidence. She stands on stage to the applause of the audience, feeling needed and recognized not for her youth, but for her talent and hard work. With each new step in her life, she feels more and more how her former losses are beginning to become part of her strength. She no longer seeks to hide age or pain, now it's all part of her personal story that helps her move on. Annie, now more independent and confident, decides to reject Aaron when he asks her to come back. He comes to her with an attempt to start over, but Annie calmly and firmly says no. She realizes that she deserves better than a relationship where she is humiliated. This act becomes her first real act of independence and confidence, gained after years of dependence on him. She no longer needs outside approval to feel her worth. After the party is over, the women, remembering the old days, triumphantly sing the song "You Don't Own Me." Their voices ring loud and bright, bringing smiles to the faces of the guests and a sense of true liberation. This moment reverberates not only with victory, but also with a sense of liberation from the past that imposed on them the role of victims. Their performance becomes a true manifesto that merges joy, pride, and a new sense of self. This moment symbolizes their victory and regaining control of their lives. Each of them has learned to respect themselves and their decisions, and now they are ready to move forward with new hope and strength. Their union is strong again, but now it is not naive as it was in their youth, but mature and realized, based on experience, pain, and victory. At this point, their friendship and mutual support become the foundation on which they build a new and more confident relationship with the world around them. They are no longer afraid of change, they become the source of change themselves.